Get up. Get up. Get up.
What's up, Mets fans? Welcome back to another episode of the Mets'd podcast, episode number 164, the official podcast of the New York Mets. We're super excited because baseball is on the horizon. Pitchers and catchers at the time of recording are 7 days away from reporting spring training. We actually have boots on the ground, you guys know, since we are affiliated with the Mets. We got some ins and outs here. We got some people that we know, and of course, Johnny Bahama, Jonny Stats, Jonny Daps, whatever you want to call him. Boots on the ground in Port St. Lucie. He will join us a little bit later to tell us about what's going on as we cover some spring training storylines, as well as everything else going on in Mets world. So if you guys have not yet followed us on all our social media, make sure you do at Mets'd on Twitter, Instagram, and TikTok. If you're looking for the YouTube video, it's on the New York Mets YouTube channel right now. Go subscribe over there. Go watch the video. Drop it a like, all that good stuff. And if you're listening to us or want to listen to us, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Google Podcasts, Odyssey, drop us a rating, drop us a review, download, and subscribe. James, it has actually been quite a minute, I feel like, since we've spoke on Zoom here for an actual episode. It's not an interview because Petriello was the last time I believe we spoke on StreamYard or whatnot.
Yeah, and last week was also Jeff McNeil. So this is the first time we've just been just the guys on Zoom, which is kind of a weird, fun adjustment. It's also just been a long week for each of us in life. So this is nice to get back here and just kind of feel normal again.
Yeah, just talk a little ball, talk about what's going on. If you guys have been following the podcast, you've been subscribed to the feed now. You saw yesterday or 2 days ago, I guess technically, I'm dating myself here. Steve Cohen was on the podcast talking to Howie Rose. They had a little interview, which was really cool. Always cool whenever the owner gets involved, especially Steve Cohen. And there was a lot of great stuff that was said during the episode. I mean, he was talking about winning. He was talking about prospects. What do you think really stuck out to you, James?
I think one of the biggest things that stuck out to me is something that we've talked about a lot on this show is that while the last collective bargaining agreement put a lot of checks and markers and how much owners could spend on their team that's on the field, there is still no limit to how much you can spend on coaches, developmental staff, data analytics people, and technology. And Steve Cohen made it very clear in that interview that he is investing every single thing that he can into building up our farm system, into creating this kind of just creating this kind of a monster down there. He even referred to the fact that when he came in, it was hollow, which I thought was a good dig that he said that. But just the fact that the Mets see the advantage that they have, Steve specifically sees the advantage that he has, and that since there's no cap on spending there, you might as well get the best of the best. And I think the Mets have shown over the last year plus, 2 years and change, that that's what they're doing.
No, I think it's really refreshing to hear that because you think of a lot of win now teams, and outside the Dodgers, maybe you look at their farm system, and usually it's not the strongest because they had to trade away some of those assets to get some of the bigger name players in. But the Mets are right now in a spot where that farm system is getting better and better and better as the years have gone on, like you just said. And they're a team that's trying to win now, which is very similar to how the Dodgers have been built, who have been one of the most successful teams in baseball. The Rays, one of the most successful teams in baseball. Look at the Astros even, who someone that we applaud all the time on this podcast, their farm system's pretty barren right now. There's not a whole lot of crazy big prospects at the moment. They have a lot of young talent at the major league level, but farm system wise, it's not as deep necessarily.
True, but I also think a lot of those teams, they don't really have the pop prospects, but they have a lot more strength in their system that we don't know about. They're not making it to the pipeline. Maybe they're making it to Baseball America, but I don't think anyone was talking about Jose Urquidy. Not that Jose Urquidy is a great pitcher at all, but the Astros just created him, and now he just gives them free innings every single year. Christian Javier was a guy who was he was fine, but as a prospect, he wasn't really that well regarded. He had warts, whatever. And Hunter Brown's a guy who came from junior college who barely even ranked the top hundreds of prospect list. He's going to be an ace in a month and a half. So I think it's a lot. I think a lot of it is just about what you're able to process internally and not really rely on these external lists rankings to evaluate your team's farm system to see how your team is evaluating these players themselves. When you see a team, like you said, like the Astros go into a season after they win the World Series, or go into a season 2 years ago when you're like, oh, I don't know what's going to happen. We're going to let a shortstop walk. We don't have a shortstop. And Jeremy Payne just walks up and he's incredible. He wins a World Series MVP. Or you just win a World Series and a guy like Justin Verlander comes to the Mets and you're like, oh, we got guys. It's fine. Dodgers too. They're just going to play Miguel Vargas every single day. He's probably going to be great.
Yeah.
They just have these people ready to go. And I think that is something the Mets are striving for. And I think that is something we can be confident we'll reach at some point.
Yeah, I think what was really cool is just the word invest being thrown around. Steve Cohen, obviously, a little bit of a Wall Street guy over there.
A little bit.
And
calling Steve Cohen a little bit of a Wall Street guy is like calling Hank Aaron a little bit of a baseball guy.
A little bit of a home run hitter, He played baseball a little bit.
He threw the ball around. Tom Brady is a football player.
him bringing that mindset to baseball is really cool. Something that we haven't seen too much of, it feels like, and I think it's something we're going to start to see a lot more of because. I mean, why not? Why not work smarter, not harder? I think that's what it really comes down to. Something that made me laugh in that interview too was that Steve Cohen is all in on celebrating Bobby Bonilla Day, which is hilarious to me. He's like, I want to bring him out every day or every year. We're going to give him a massive check, and he's going to have to somehow transport that home in order for it to cash or whatever. I thought that was hilarious. I'm in. I'm in for embracing the troll.
We should have been doing that forever, just because like this is a day that all these other teams pay deferred money anyway, and for some reason Bobby Bonilla, guy doesn't even like make that much money on deferred payment day. He's the one. Like let's bring Saberhagen back too for his $250,000. Like every team, this should be something that all teams do. Like I want Max Scherzer in Nationals Park when he's 68 years old, like collecting a check and walking on the field. Like this is funny. Like these teams sign these contracts and these exist for a very long time. Ken Griffey Jr. should be out in Cincinnati next year collecting like one of the biggest checks on the entire team. Like this should be happening across the league.
Might be the best center fielder on that team still to this day. Not a great depth out there in the outfield, but yeah, a lot of great things in the conversation between Howie and Steve. If you guys have not yet listened to it, make sure you go check it out. It's on our podcast feed. It's episode 163, and it's also on the New York Mets YouTube channel. Go give that a listen or a watch if you have not yet done so. We also talked to Mike Petriello before that episode came out, so if you guys have not seen that, give it a listen. Probably, I feel like I say this after every interview, but one of my favorite interviews we've ever given. It was so much fun just talking straight up ball like that.
Yeah, and Mike is just one of the most knowledgeable baseball people that exist right now. Like you guys have seen him for years. He started out Fangraphs, ESPN, MLB. Like he's been all over the place, and he has such a hand in the building up proliferation of Baseball Savant, Statcast, as referred to sometimes. And listening to him talk about a lot of the internal processes and just like how they kind of come about is really cool. He's like, I don't know. You and I are both like relatively like young in our baseball journey, and like Mike's a guy who's been doing this for a very long time. So it's cool just to see him like talk like very like I don't know, he's like stoically about like what he's done.
It's also nice to get a perspective on the team that we root for and podcast for that is not someone that is a Mets fan necessarily. We get a little bit more of a unbiased opinion maybe on stuff. I think I'm probably more biased than you if we really had to go anywhere, but at the end of the day, we are still Mets fans and we definitely see things with rose-colored glasses sometimes, but I mean, he had a lot of really good things to say about the team, and if you guys have not yet given it a listen, definitely go give it a listen.
Definitely also killed me when he mentioned just the fact of like how the Mets are viewed by their own fans. Like the fact that here's someone who's like not associated with the Mets, but he lived in New York for a long time and he puts out a lot of Mets related content. I think for that reason, just so an outside perspective on like how Mets Twitter seems. It's like, oh, that's a scary place. I can't believe you guys like live inside there. Another thing that was really funny. Yeah.
We love you guys, but you're a little scary sometimes.
Yeah, another great thing that Mike said, which is my little segue transition right here, is that he thought one of the most underrated players go on the Mets going into next season was my guy Tommy Pham.
Your boy Tommy Pham
Cracked me up when we were interviewing him, and this is actually hilariously the first time we've talked to you guys since the Mets made that signing, which is like what 3 weeks ago now, just because we've done interviews, pre-recorded stuff, and just keep it moving along. So we got to talk about Tommy Pham.
Yeah, no, Tommy Pham going to be the fourth outfielder, hopefully, for the Mets this season. I mean, I shouldn't be talking about him. This is your guy at the end of the day. I should let you take the floor because Tommy Pham, you've been beating the drum for the old Mets'd Up listeners. This has been the guy since episode 1. James has had circled and said, I want Tommy Pham on this team.
All right, come on. All right.
This is.
I mean, in a way, but you're exaggerating a little bit right now. But it's just, he just fit like
Go back and listen.
Yeah, everyone go back and listen to every single episode of this podcast ever. But he just fills a lot of needs that this team kind of had at the same time, where it's like, okay, we need another guy who can play the outfield, check. We need a guy who has a little bit of power, check. We need a guy who gets on base, check. Like, just, you can't really do much better than that for only a few $1 million. And it's pretty cool that Tommy Pham was able to do that and be a nice little, tight little package. And there were a lot of Mets fans who were kind of like freaking out about this as if they want like the team's fourth outfielder to be like Juan Soto or like Mike Trout or like some talented players. But I think in terms of like fourth outfielders across Major League Baseball, a guy who's only probably going to get like 400, 500 plate appearances this season, maybe some probably somewhere in between. Yeah, you know. But I think this is just it's just a good spot to be. It really is.
What do you think makes Tommy Pham someone you like more than the other free agents that were available to maybe be a fourth outfielder? I know Adam Duvall's on the Red Sox, but like the names that were going around were like Duvall, Profar, Tommy Pham, like those guys.
I mean, I would have been fine with Duvall because Duvall gives you a lot more defensively than Tommy Pham. Pham, as he's gotten older, I think he's 34, 35 now. It's just the defense is something that's starting to go. And like, I don't know, that's just going to happen. A guy's aging. That's why he's a fourth outfielder now rather than rather than a guy who's going to be slated to get 600 play appearances with a team. But what he brings more so than a guy like we talked about Profar a couple times. Well, what other outfielders we talked about who were even in the running for this?
I feel like it was mostly Profar,
Yeah,
Duvall, and
Profar
Pham.
Duval.
Maybe
Yeah,
McCutcheon a little bit when he was
yeah, I
still
guess.
available, I think.
But it's just it's just again more power, more power. He gets on base more, a lot more than Duvall, which is. But I think that was probably the biggest difference there for me. You're kind of trading some defense for some on base ability. And he's a righty too, which I think this Mets lineup could use another righty bat like that, especially someone's going to come off the bench once in a while. And just a little bit of power. We need that power. Right now from the Bat X projection system, which is Derek Carty's projection system, something that has proven to be incredibly accurate year over year. Tommy Pham has the fourth highest expected ISO on the entire team, like projection wise.
Okay.
Of guys who are projected to play at least 100 games, which in one hand is scary, but on the other hand, it's kind of cool. You're able to just pull a guy in for a couple $1 million who has that kind of power potential.
No, 100%. I mean, there's definitely value in having Tommy Pham on this team. Like you said, as a fourth outfielder, I think it's a very nice spot to have a guy like him because at times he does show those flashes where you're like, oh, there's the younger Tommy Pham that we remember, the all-star caliber outfielder, which no disparaging any of the guys that we had in the past before, as our fourth outfielders or whatnot, but they weren't like former all-stars. Like I feel like the last time there was a former all-star that was the fourth outfielder was like Jose Bautista, and we know that year was a complete mess anyway. So
And he's only 34 years old, so there is still a path for Tommy Pham to like recoup at least some value and maybe have one good year with the Mets, have his 400 plate appearances, hit well, and like get himself a 2-year deal next year to keep running out this back end of his career. And also, there is this like it's not without warts. I mentioned the defense being an issue. Tommy Pham's strikeout rates also went up way up last year, but that also could have been like a frustration issue. I also looked into his stats a little bit. It seems like he had a bit more pronounced of a passivity issue than he's ever had in the past. And when I say passivity,
okay.
I mean he just wasn't. Tommy Pham's never been a guy who swung very much, and that's been one of the calling cards of his game. Never chasing. Even last year, his chase rate was an 88th percentile. But last year, he kind of stopped punishing the pitches he should have been punishing as much. He's always been a dead red fastball hitter. Struggles with off speed, struggles with breaking balls. And last year, he also saw the lowest percentage of fastballs he's ever seen in his career, which makes a lot of sense from the opposing team's perspective. So it's going to be interesting to see how he shifts back. But also, that could kind of be a function of the baseball as well. If you notice that the contact you're making isn't as good, even though his barrel rate was still better than league average, his exit velocity was still in the top 10% of the entire league, there could be, it's going to be interesting to see how he adjusts to breaking balls off speed stuff. So it's going to be cool to see our hitting coaches work with him. It's going to be cool to see how he adjusts to being in more of a complementary role. I think it was a good player to sign. The skill set fits what this roster needed very well.
Good depth piece. Good depth piece. We talk about it. Let's fill out that whole 26-man roster, and this definitely helps. And that also kind of brings us into our spring training storylines before we bring in Jonny Daps, Johnny Bahama to tell us about what's going on in Port St. Lucie. There definitely, I feel like, are a few storylines going into spring training that are super important to talk about and something to keep an eye out for because, I mean, let's be honest, the Mets are a pretty interesting team, and some of these decisions, some of these storylines could make a big impact. One of them being just the prospect situation, or prospects with quotation marks now, because we know Vientos, Beatty, Alvarez, they're all major league caliber players. We saw them at the major league level last year. What they're going to look like in spring training, what their position on the team could be opening day. I feel like that's probably the biggest one, right?
Definitely. And also just kind of the way they interact with the guys, like just seeing how these dudes walk into a spring training and like the first time in their lives, we're actually kind of members of this team. It's unlikely they break camp with the team based on like reports we've been seeing last few weeks and also just based on the Mets roster construction. But this is the first time these guys are walking in the major league camp like we belong here. Every single one of those guys at least got to the club last year. They've all gotten their feet wet. They've all taken a dip in the pool. They've all had literally a cup of coffee. And now it's time to see what you got. And that picture went viral of that video of Beatty and Alvarez the other day. Johnny went half viral, dapping up Mark Vientos, his boy. We'll talk about that in a little bit. But it's kind of cool that a team like this Mets team with so many talented veterans, like so many pieces in place to make a deep run right now, actually has 3 high potential prospects that can supplement the rest of the roster.
100%. Should I bring in John now since he's already there and we know what's going on?
I guess we might as well. Why not? We're gonna preview. You can preview
Let's bring him
storylines
in.
whenever. This is real data.
There he is, John. How we were talking about like the guys feeling like they're big leaguers finally making it there. Is there anything that you've noticed from Beatty, Alvarez, Vientos so far?
Yeah, what's up, guys? Good to see you. Hope the weather. I heard is a warm day up in New York, which is nice to hear. Nice 76 degrees here today on Wednesday. So,
Johnny weather.
going back to what you guys were saying the fact that these guys are here right now and working hard, we get started pretty early in the morning with what we're doing, why we're here, and these guys are doing the same exact thing, and it's incredibly impressive. The first morning, Monday of this week, 9 a.m. I look to my left, and Brett Beatty and Mark Vientos and Francisco Alvarez are walking through the door to the batting cages. Um, you know, Beatty and Vientos especially have been tied at the hip. There's been a couple trios tied at the hip, which I've noticed. That's one of them. Today they were on one of the backfields hitting with Alex Ramirez, who is a very, very impressive young man. 6'3", 6'4", has definitely filled out a little bit, and he's still incredibly young. Projected to be a center fielder. Mets fans have a lot to be excited with him. But Beatty and Vientos hitting frozen ropes all over, then going to take ground balls together at third base, encouraging each other, laughing, having a good time. You could see a rivalry brewing between two guys, especially that close to the major league level, competing for probably the same at bats, perhaps. It's not a rivalry whatsoever. They're rooting for each other. They're mixing it up.
It's cool.
If you watch, you could just it's legit. It's authentic. Another duo I've seen that have been tied at the hip are Omar Narvaez and Francisco Alvarez.
It's a good one.
I have not seen one without the other. Omar, obviously, going to be on the major league roster, was signed to probably play at least 70 games, if not have a timeshare with Tomas Nido behind the plate. He's been incredibly active, catching bullpen sessions for minor league guys. He's been all over, just imparting his wisdom. And being in the batting cages for Francisco Alvarez BP, it's something different, man. The way the ball sounds different coming off this guy's bat. It's crazy.
Oh, when we were at Brooklyn, we got to see him like literally up close and personal. I mean, at Citi Field, we're on the field too, but Brooklyn, they kind of just let us go as close as we really wanted. It's a booming noise. It's like you talk about like the crack of the bat. It reminded me of like he took BP similar to guys I put in the conversation of like Giancarlo Stanton, Vlad Guerrero Jr., Bo Bichette, like guys that I've seen in person live take BP, where I go, oh, there's something different here. Like Fernando Tatis was a part of that group, and the way Francisco Alvarez hits, he's part of that group for me too. Of man, he's a little bit different than everybody else.
Also, the first time I remember we had Matt Eddy from Baseball America on this show, I think it was about the late summer-ish or maybe it could have been even fall, winter time of 2021. He said even at the Futures game that season, that the two most impressive batting practices by far, all the major prospects in baseball there were Francisco Alvarez and Brett Baty. He said they were 1 and 1A, and no one else came close.
Which is sick. That's sick, especially as a Mets fan to hear that these young guys are as good as they're being hyped up to be. Because sometimes, these prospect guys can overhype some dudes every once in a while. Mets have had a couple guys like that in the past before. But I love to hear that Alvarez is hanging around Narvaez, though, too, because the one thing that's being talked about with Alvarez is he needs to work defensively on his catching game. And apparently he has been working all winter long to get better defensively. And he feels like he's in a comfortable spot. But Narvaez is a guy who just recently, like in the last couple of years, has really improved defensively as well. So whatever secrets and tricks he learned, I definitely want him to give them to Francisco Alvarez as well.
I have another question for you, John. We've talked about best prospects in this team: Vientos, Beatty, Alvarez, Ramirez. Is there another prospect, maybe an under-the-radar guy who maybe the Mets fans haven't heard so much about, who's impressed you so far through a couple of days of camp?
There are a few relief pitchers that I've taken notice of. Many Mets fans might have heard of him, but he fell off the radar a bit last year due to injury, and that's lefty Josh Walker, who I saw him throwing today, and it's impressive. And he was a guy, he's not that young. He went to New Haven, then he went to Tampa, so he played college ball. I think he's 28 now. If injuries hadn't sidetracked him last year, I do believe that there was a chance he would have made an impact on the major league roster. I mean, think about it. Like Nate Fisher came up and played a big role in a game, and he was in banking prior to that. Josh Walker has better stuff than Nate Fisher. No offense to Nate Fisher, but Josh Walker has good stuff. So he's a guy who, again, I saw him throwing yesterday, looked great, was putting the ball exactly where he wanted to. A guy that I think has a chance of making an impact on the major leagues. And there's a couple other relievers that I've watching. So there's 6 mounds across. There's an area, it's called the 6-pack, and it's 6 mounds. And, this is pretty standard for most major league complexes. And it's just, 6 guys throwing at once, and you can really get a good sense of, and these, right now it's a lot of young guys, 2022 draft picks, guys that pitched at St. Lucie, guys that pitched at Brooklyn last year. And, you're just kind of scouting out and seeing, oh, who's got the stuff? And I mean, there's stuff all over the place, but 2 tall, imposing figures. That's Junior Santos and Sammy Tavares, both 6'7", And then you add Bryce Montes-de-Oca, who we saw in Queens last year, and the Mets have themselves 3 tight ends all over the place. Just when it comes to relief arms down on the farm. Um, Tavares had, I think, I was looking at the numbers before. I think 54 strikeouts and 40 innings of work, 40 plus innings of work last year. Really impressive stuff. Again, putting the ball exactly where he wanted. He was actually requesting that Glenn Sherlock stand in and kind of like replicate a batter in the box just so he can work on locating his pitches to guys from different sides of the plate. And he was doing so. Incredibly, incredibly impressive. Kevin Parada's been here.
Nice.
I've seen him working with pitchers, which has been really good to see. Just the way that he takes command, encouraging the guys he's working with. But another catcher, definitely backstop material. Obviously, the Mets invested a very high draft pick in him. But yeah, those are 3 or 4 guys that I've really noticed so far. A couple other major leaguers are here right now. David Peterson's here. He's been throwing a little bit. Saw him throwing with Steven Nagosic earlier today. Kodai Senga has arrived in Port
Nice.
St. Lucie. His tweet went out that he was leaving Japan. It was about 36 hours ago now, and he was there today, and he got right to it, stretching, playing some long
Nice.
toss, but he dove right in. That was awesome to see.
How's it been him camaraderie wise with the team? Like even with the language barrier, just being a very new guy. Like has he been, has there been any interaction you've noticed?
Today was a big introduction day for him. Like he had, I think, just gotten into Florida in the last
Okay.
6-7 hours. So he was definitely tired. He took it easy. He didn't really throttle it up too much. Used some weighted balls. Like I said, did some long tossing. But, this is an incredible time of year where the t-shirts and the shorts and we're on turf backfields and we're just playing catch and you hear the pop of the glove and the crack of the bat and the cleats, the spikes clackling on the concrete. It is a special time and baseball is back. The Super Bowl is going to be over, before we know it. We'll get to that in a little bit. I definitely need those
Yeah.
picks. And and then come Monday, you turn the page and it's baseball season. That's all we'll be talking about on the radio, and that's it until March Madness comes, and then it's baseball season. So incredible scenes, as Darren would say.
I'll say I'm getting excited listening to you talk about just like the idea of just like shorts and the t-shirt right now is
Yeah.
something that brings a smile to my face
It's
because that means
nice. Oh, it's
baseball's
nice.
back. I can't wait till we get down in Florida at some point to get to Mets spring training, which would be really cool because through my experiences before, like you just gave a little bit of insight of the relationships that guys have or just how they're interacting, things that they're working on. That's some of the stuff that I've noticed too when I've been at spring training and found a guy like Tyler Mahle who had a little bit of trouble earlier in his career, started to figure it out. When I went to Red Spring Training in 2020, he was like working nonstop on like very, very specific things, and his career has gotten better since. Like it's cool to see the guys put in the work and then it actually plays out on the field. And I'm super interested too because the Mets have like Verlander and Scherzer, who I would love every pitcher to watch and just follow around as if they're like shadows of them.
There's one more guy that I've noticed who has been around, a veteran, non-roster invite, and it's Tommy Hunter. And I didn't want to forget to mention this because Tommy Hunter is here and the young pitchers are flocking to Tommy Hunter to try to take up as much of his wisdom as possible. Tommy Hunter is hilarious. I mean,
Oh
you
yeah.
guys know, you guys interviewed him last year. Hilarious dude, electric personality. Him being on those backfields, just chopping it up with the young players, it's incredible to watch. I mean, I wish we could just mic him up and hear him all day and just hear the interactions, the conversations, the wisdom he's imparting on these young players, these young pitchers. Hilarious. And look, it's February 8th. He's been here for a few days. He's already working. And if it's not him getting better, it's helping others get better. And for a guy at, the path or his path on a journey of a baseball life, just awesome to see. And that's what it's all about is guys like that. Just, I mean, it's literally not to be cliche. It's for the love of the game. That's why he's
It
there.
is.
That's it.
I'd love to hear that. I'd love to hear about all these guys interacting with each other down there. It's kind of the most beautiful thing about spring training. It's like the first day any of these guys have ever had practice with like a new team in their entire lives. Like you don't know half the guys. Some of them you do know. Some are from out of town. One guy's from Japan, and it's like just everyone's just hanging out.
No, it's a cool feeling. Like it makes me miss baseball. It makes me being a part of a team. There's something to just like warming up with the guys, like you said,
What do you
and
mean we
getting
are?
ready for the season. Well, yeah, okay, true. It's a different team. It's a different team than
It's spring training for us also.
yeah, spring training. We're breaking off the rust, even though we've been doing this all year. But still, at the end of the day, I mean, it's exciting that baseball's coming around. Some other stories to talk about. We talked about starting pitching. We talked about the young guys, Kodai Senga. How about just the bullpen in general? I know that James is going to be happy to talk about this one, but the Mets have low key put together what, like 10, 15 pitchers deep in the bullpen of like really good arms.
Yeah, the Mets have just this hilarious clique of dudes who are like have some like shockingly high potential while also just being scrap heap additions. They pulled in another one this week. I'll talk about by Sam Coonrod really briefly. So he came from the Phillies, so a lot of Mets fans probably have poor memories of him pitching badly against us because he really didn't have that great of results with the Phillies. But he also spent some time with the Giants a few years ago, and I think that there is a little bit of secret potential in this arm, just as I would say about any of these random pitchers who the Mets pull in. But Coonrod's a guy who, before he had some arm trouble last year, was sitting 98 to 100. Again, he fell back a little bit last year, had some injury problems. He doesn't have like the best fastball shape in the world, but it's also not bad. It's definitely something, especially with that velocity, that's like more than okay. It shouldn't even be close to a problem. And he also throws plenty of sinkers. So like 65% of his pitches the last couple of years have been four-seam fastballs and sinkers, which I guess if you're throwing 98, that's fine, but he wasn't getting great results. So I'm wondering if that's a place where the Mets look to make a little adjustment with him. And he also struggled with command a lot of that sinker. Fastball as well. He's just never been a guy who commanded anything really well, but the fastball he was much more effective with than the sinker. And then he's had like some very weird track records with his breaking balls or just off-speed pitches in general. He's had a slider, but it seems like he's been slowly turning that slider into a cutter for the last few years, or maybe it just has always been a cutter, but it's just classified on these websites as a slider where it keeps getting harder and harder, like more velocity. It keeps getting less and less movement. So it seems like he's making a very concerted effort to turn this pitch into a cutter. And past that, since he doesn't really have a slider anymore or a breaking ball, last year, literally in his last like 6 appearances the entire season, he debuted this curveball he hadn't thrown in years. And the curveball was great. It had much more drop than league average. It had good horizontal movement across the zone. And it didn't get that many whiffs because it didn't seem like he really had a grasp on it. But in terms of the pitch physics, it was really, really good. And I'm wondering if the Mets kind of saw how that curveball worked, saw how hard he threw. And he also has a changeup that's been his out pitch for years. Traditionally, it's gotten a lot of ground balls and also been his highest whiff pitch. I think last year was like 35%. He didn't have another pitch over 20. So there is a lot to work with here in terms of like a ball of clay, a dart throw for a random reliever. And it goes with a lot of the guys the Mets have pulled in this offseason in general. It starts out with a fastball is 97, 98 miles an hour, and what seems like one very above average breaking ball, which is literally, as we've gone over, all you need to be a dominant reliever. Edwin Diaz doesn't even consider throwing a third pitch, and no one can touch him. Like if you have two really good ones, you're elite. Even if you have one really good one, you're pretty good. And it looks like there's a chance for Coonrod to become one of those guys.
Well, I saw you tweet out the Fangraphs
the roster resource
depth chart, of the Mets AAA bullpen situation, which is something in previous years like we've been scrambling to find guys. It seems like the Mets have a plethora of them right now, which is like so weird that we're talking about this as like really cool and nice. But I think it is important and stuff that you see again. The best teams in baseball do. You have a deep, deep roster.
That's hilarious that you can tweet out a picture of like the AAA bullpen and get like 80,000 impressions. But that's just how tight, how much Mets fans want to make something happen right now. But this bullpen, Zach Green, we're talking about him Rule 5. I don't think he can actually be in the AAA bullpen because Rule 5 stats means he has to be in the Major League roster. But I guess he's just there based on how it came out with. And my boy Jeff Brigham, who might just be one of the best relievers in baseball once we get around to it. Coonrod, Montes de Oca, who John mentioned before, Steven Ridings, Tommy Hunter, of course, Jimmy Akabonis, who's just to throw some of the most giftable pitches in baseball. William Woods, Eric Orza. There's just guys down there. If two of those guys pop, we could be looking at a monster of a bullpen back there. And there's a good chance we gave ourselves a lot of opportunity to get some pop.
And there's also TJ McFarland, who is here right now, another non-roster invite, who the Mets signed a few weeks ago. You look at his 2020, and granted, a small sample, he was a very, very effective relief pitcher. Another guy that can make an impact on this team from the left side, which the Mets, you hear, are looking to possibly add another lefty. There's been articles written about that, and that might be the guy right there. It might be TJ McFarland along with Brooks Raley in the bullpen. So, yeah, there's really a glutton of arms that are going to compete, and it's going to be, and that's going to be the most interesting for me part of this spring training because the Mets at most positions are set starter wise.
Yeah,
and there's going to be guys that are going to the World Baseball Classic. You know, it could be up to 12, perhaps. We'll see what the rosters look like when they're released on Thursday. And that's going to give opportunities to a lot tonight when people are listening. But there are going to be opportunities, and there are going to be in these spring training game opportunities. And that's what's exciting for me is just to see those things because, look, you get to the fifth inning of a spring training game, and it's like I could fall asleep. I could put on something else, whatever. But innings 5 through 9 in these games, they're going to mean something for these roster spots, these very, very valuable roster spots. So a lot left to be decided, and a lot of talent down here at St. Lucie.
No, 100%. I'm super excited.
I was just gonna say, even if they don't mean something for the roster spots, right? When camp breaks, like we just know how fluid these bullpens are for like every single team in baseball, especially the good ones as the year goes on. Like John Curtis has an option. New pitcher Eliezer Hernandez has an option. Yeah, I forgot even John Curtis. We didn't even mention him. He's a guy who the Mets signed last year, the rehab the whole year. 2 years ago, he was lights out for the Tampa Bay Rays, and he had an okay year for the Marlins after. Not as good, took a step back, but he has a great year in his pedigree. Peterson and McGill still have tons of options. We're gonna have Jose Budo in the mix. He still has options. All these pitchers we're mentioning, Jeff Brigham has options. Sam Coonrod has options. Monte Oka has options. Steven Ridings has options. Eric Orza has options. No, yeah, he has options. And William Woods has
Joey
options.
Lucchesi.
Yeah, I said Lucchesi. So we're
Joey
gonna have
Lucchesi. Didn't hear you.
all right. He said it twice. So it's so nice they named him twice. But there's gonna be a lot of movement for these guys next year. The Mets have built themselves a super flexible bullpen with a lot of sneaky high potential arms. It's pretty cool from our perspective to be like, oh my God, the process is working. That's the best part.
How nice is it we're just talking about baseball right now? We haven't been able to go 30 minutes deep about meaningful baseball. Like we had the free agent signings, we had the rumors, we had all that stuff going on, but now we're talking about what's going to be happening on the field in just a couple weeks really is when games really start. I think the end of February, the last week, there will be games being played of baseball. They don't matter, but they do matter. Spring training still is important. I'm super excited. World Baseball Classic coming up. I think we'll talk about that more in the next episode just because it feels stupid to divulge into it when
without rosters.
We don't really even know what the rosters are. It's just bad timing on our part. But next episode, I'll promise we'll talk more about the World Baseball Classic. Perfect way to put a bow on this one and wrap it up. Let's just finish it with the Super Bowl. We got the Super Bowl this weekend, the big game. Mets got the ad coming in the Super Bowl, which is really, really cool. I've never heard of another team doing an ad in the Super Bowl before. Have you guys?
No. Can't wait to see John's desk on television.
Ooh, is it going to make it, John?
I don't think my desk made it, but maybe a bobblehead that sits on my desk made it. You never know.
Maybe a stray sriracha bottle.
I don't think, but that would be great. But that'd be cross promotion too.
I guess.
I mean,
that'd
be Sriracha would have to buy into the ad.
No free ads.
No free ads. But yeah, that's going to be cool to see for sure. And then obviously the game itself. Let's just go ahead and do predictions. Let's do winner, score, and let's go with MVP, game MVP, or you want to do like first touchdown?
But I also want to know. I want to go around and do everyone's favorite Super Bowl snack because that's important.
Okay.
And right now, I'm trying to put together a bomb menu for this game.
Oh, I got it.
And we're kind of in the not argument stages, but you don't want to overdo it per se. So you can't order everything on the menu, like maybe like 5 or 6. So we're having a hard time. No one say nachos. Nachos are definitely going to happen. So that's a given.
Easy.
So I don't want to hear that.
I've got mine. Let me just say mine right now.
Okay.
Wait, so don't say that. Say
favorite Super Bowl snack.
All right, go.
All right, favorite Super Bowl snack.
You want to do Mount Rushmore's?
Yeah, we'll bring it back. Favorite Super Bowl snack.
We don't have a fourth person.
We don't have a fourth person.
Well,
just say our favorite snack.
Everyone tweeted Vito.
There's 4 presidents on the mountain.
Make his tummy feel okay. He's sick tonight.
Yes. Shout out to Vito.
Feel better, Vito.
Do we know what he ate, by the way, so we can avoid it? Do we know what kind of food it was?
Let's just.
Yeah, I think we should let sleeping dogs lie.
Anything.
Okay.
Yeah, could have been anything.
The favorite Super Bowl snack of mine is pigs in a blanket. Pigs in a blanket
you're gonna say
are
that.
Interesting.
Sick. I love hot dogs. I love hot dogs and pigs in a blanket.
Okay.
Oh, phenomenal.
Can you order those from a restaurant, to cater into a party in bulk, though?
I feel like you can't make them yourself. Get the crescent rolls.
You got an oven in there?
Like $8.
No. There's I got a dishwasher, I got a sink, but no. And we're gonna have probably 15-ish people, so you would need a lot of pigs and blankets. And I'm not entirely sure that wherever we decide to order from, I don't know where you could find those. That's why I asked.
Might be
you'd have to just.
Yeah, that's something you have to do yourself.
Give me a practical one from a restaurant.
Okay, go James first.
One that you're.
I mean, it's the only thing is wings, right? Like, what else besides wings makes sense for a Super Bowl, especially from a restaurant? Like, if I was gonna say no restaurant, I think my 2 favorites for a Super Bowl party are something I do a lot for Super Bowl parties myself. I did it for us, Mark and I, at the Super Bowl party last year. I make my famous pulled pork. It's a banger. A little bit of root beer, a little bit of poop beer, a little bit of cinnamon, a little bit of barbecue sauce. It's quite good. And then
slow cook.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Oh, it went for 16 hours last year in my slow cooker before I went. I put it in.
It was
low and slow.
When I came home on Saturday night, the night before the Super Bowl, nothing crazy, but I cut my fat, I seasoned the butt, and I stuck it in there with the root beer overnight. And then in the morning, I woke up nice and early, took the bone out, did some shredding, and let it sit there the rest of the day. Drained a little bit of the root beer out and let it sit there the rest of the day until we were up to the Upper East Side. So shout out Ernie, biggest Jonathan VR fan ever's apartment, and that was great. But then otherwise, like the goat is just buffalo chicken dip as well. There's nothing better Super Bowl party than just hanging out by the cauldron, just dipping and walking. Nothing better.
I like a sandwich too. I like when you get like a big sub and it's cut up and you just get a
That's
little
also
piece.
great.
I
That's
like
a great call.
sandwich.
That's a good call from a restaurant too.
And that could be
That could be the
and
winner.
that could be applicable to what we're looking to do here. That's a good share.
Great share.
All right. So one of mine. I like little nibbles. I'm a big nibble guy.
Of course.
I like frickles. And for
What?
those who are like, what's a
What
frickle?
is a frickle?
Oh, guys, come on. James, you went to a Big Ten school, man.
We've kept John on the
Okay.
episode too long. Talking about frickles.
Okay. A frickle, very simply, is a fried pickle. I've known it as frickles.
I've never heard them call them a frickle. They are delicious though. No, they're great.
I've only known them as frickles.
I mean, yeah, I know.
Do you?
The education standards in Indiana are not very high, but
oh, really? What happened a couple weeks ago on the basketball court? Anyway, so I've only known them as frickles, and if you have the right dip, they are delicious. They've got to be chips, though. I did go to a bar one time in Jersey
Spear's
City,
bad.
and they gave me like a whole gherkins. Yeah,
Terrible.
I was disgusted. This was animal. This classifies as animal. But frickles, shareable. You can order them in mass for a party of 15 or so. Frickles all day. Now, let me go back to the wings question, James. Boneless or bone in?
I mean, it's a personal preference thing. Like I'm never gonna shy away from bone in. Bone in is the traditional wing. It's natural. You know, that's kind of what you want to eat. You get boneless wings. That's kind of basically a chicken tender. It's like that's easy if you're with like a group who maybe
I knew you were going to say that. I knew you were going to say that.
I'll tell you this though.
Chicken tender.
It
They are delicious. I'll eat
chicken
them.
nugget, chicken tender.
Yeah.
Yeah, but they're delicious. Like if I have the
Incredible.
option to get a buffalo chicken tender or a regular chicken tender,
Yeah.
I'm clearly choosing the buffalo one. Like
Yeah.
they're very, very good. There's no shame in liking either or. And I feel like for you, James, you probably can't really eat the boneless ones too because gluten free.
Yeah, boneless wings are mostly breaded, so I always opt for the bone in. Also, the bone in, it's like that's just the regular wing. The boneless is just like this is some chicken parts we put together.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, you just lose so much meat with the bone in. You know,
Well, you
the
gotta want
flats
it.
are impossible. Although
Flats are the
I
only
haven't,
way.
I haven't. No.
No, they're both
suck,
they're
dude.
both
Flats
good.
are
They're both
terrible.
good. They're both good.
Flats.
There's positivity in each.
Oh no.
How long are we gonna talk about food? It's been 8
No.
minutes.
Well, do you slide the bone out? Do you slide the bone out like the professional way to eat a flat?
No,
Have you seen that yet?
I crush
No?
one and then I
Look
just pop
into
it
it.
open and I go in.
All right.
All right,
I know you guys
let's get
have
to
been talking
scores
about
now.
this.
Let's get to
let's
scores
not
now.
about
All right.
football. Enough about
Let's
food,
wrap it
I
up.
mean.
Let's
Yeah.
talk about scores. All right. I'm going to go with mine. I said 37-34 Chiefs. My first touchdown score of the game is going to be Isaiah Pacheco.
Ooh, nice. I think it's going to
Go
be
Rutgers.
chop. I think it's going to be 27-21 Chiefs. I think first touchdown of the game though will be Jalen Hurts rushing.
Ooh, okay.
Mhm.
John?
I like that. I don't have a score. I'm going to go 28-20. The Eagles are winning this game. Sorry to say it. That's no doubt in my mind. Philadelphia is winning this game. I'm going to give you an anytime touchdown score, and that is A.J. Brown.
Okay.
Who has had a
Wow,
relatively
really
quiet
off the beaten
playoffs.
path. AJ Brown. Has he done much?
He has not really, but I'm waiting. It's going to happen. It's going to happen this Sunday. So that's my pick. And yeah, the Eagles are a mortal lock. I can't believe you guys both said the Chiefs.
Nah,
I
don't
can't
think
I can't pick the Eagles. You
No,
know how much I
also-
hate Philadelphia.
I don't know.
Yeah, bet with your head, not with your heart.
No, I'm using my head. I think the Chiefs roster, top to bottom, is like quite good. I don't think people are really giving it the recognition they deserve. And I also, the Eagles. I don't know
Shouldn't even be
who's
in this game.
I don't know who's going to guard Travis Kelce. Like, there's just that's it. No doubt about it. Like,
Well.
I don't think anyone's going to stop him.
All right. I mean, listen, we'll see what happens this weekend in the big game on Super Bowl Sunday.
I think Mark and I are actually spending it with Vito, which will be fun.
Yeah, we will be fun hanging out in Brooklyn with Vito.
Well, then you
watching the
better
big
then
game.
you better focus on that menu to make sure that no one's stomach goes awry.
It's true. Yeah.
It's a bad week to get food poisoning. Week before the Super Bowl. It's one of the worst weeks of the year to get food poisoning.
You think that's bad? I once went to Mexico the week before the Super Bowl, and got Montezuma's revenge.
Oh, that's
And
tough.
needless to say, I did not have any freckles that Super Bowl Sunday.
A lot of
Needless
celery,
to
a lot of
say, I'll
carrots
leave
and
it at
celery.
that.
Perfect way for us to wrap up the episode. John talking about his digestive issues. John, thanks for talking with us. We'll catch you on the next episode. And yeah, that's it for this episode of the Mets'd Up Podcast, guys. Episode number 164. Thank you for listening. Thank you for watching. Make sure you follow us on Mets'd Up on Twitter and Instagram, as well as TikTok. If you're looking for the YouTube video, New York Mets YouTube channel for now. And if you're listening to us, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Google Podcasts, Odyssey, drop us a rating, review, download, and subscribe. Follow James on Twitter at
James_Shiano.
and me at Giraffe Neck Mark with a C. We'll catch you guys next week after the Super Bowl. Baseball season's almost here. We'll catch you guys on the next episode. Peace out.